Welcome everyone to Planetside 2 construction guides and tutorials. This series is to help new and old builders, covering all topics surrounding construction. Today we are covering 10 beginner tips for construction. Tip number 1 is to deploy your ant to grab structures prior to filling up. Now while you are harvesting cordium, make sure to deploy your ant and grab a structure before topping off. If you are building a new base, once you have enough to buy your silo, deploy your ant and buy a silo. Once that is done, you can now have a full tank of cordium as well as a silo in your pocket to make the most out of your trip. Every time you venture out to get more cordium, deploy and buy your next item. Try to pocket your most expensive items to get the best return. For tip number 2, we are going to cover the placement mechanics real quick. You already know how to spin walls and other structures, but holding down Control while left click or right clicking will slow the rotation. Holding both the left and right button will allow you to bring the object closer or move it farther away from you. Make sure your blue dots are below the terrain and the green dots above. Now this may sound pretty simple, but there are going to be a lot of times when the terrain is not in your favor. And you may spend well over 5 minutes getting that perfect slow rotating piece to fit somewhere. Try not to build next to cordium. It is well known in the building community that you do not want to build within 100 meters of a cordium spawn. Doing so, it is very likely that spawn, once harvested, will not come back. Now there are going to be times when you will see the cordium come back every time, or even a spire of cordium coming out of a base. But overall, the general rule is you should not build within 100 meters of a cordium spawn. Number 4, we are looking at the spawn tube and router. Now the new spawn tube seen here shows where the back of the spawn is, making it easier than ever to know and direct friendlies who are spawning from it. Currently now the back of the spawn tube is signified by the green dot that is sticking outside of the tube. That will be the back of the spawn tube. So if you want friendlies to spawn in front of the vehicle pad to promote them pulling armor or air, make sure when they spawn they are facing it. As for the router, when people spawn, it will mirror how you placed it. For example, I want friendly forces to spawn and be able to go straight into battle down this hallway. I turn my back to the onslaught and place the router. Now when you spawn in, you will be facing down the corridor, giving friendlies a direct path, of where they want to go. Probably one of the biggest things when it comes to building a base is having an objective. Will this be a router base, a forward operating base, or maybe you just want to blow something up with an orbital? Try to have an idea of what you are wanting to build before you start building it. Tip number 6 is less is more when building a router base. You will only need the bare minimum when making a router base. A silo, spawn tube, and a router spire. Anything more than that, you'll just be attracting attention. You want to keep the router base hidden as much as you can. Sometimes though that won't be an option, and you'll just have to make do with what you got. If you know you're going to be router hopping or being the main person supplying the router from base to base, I will make sure to have a loadout with a pocket flash to make it easier getting to where I need to get to. Everyone can have access to a repair tool no matter what your class is, and it does not have a cooldown. Everyone can pitch in when they need to when it comes to repairing the base. All you need to do is go to the silo and pick one up from the field tools at the very bottom. Be careful not to right click though, that will deconstruct items. Don't get attached to your base. What you have created is awesome, and it's great to look at when you're done and say, wow, I made that. 3 enemy lightnings later and all that's left is a waypoint on the map where your base used to be. Don't get discouraged or upset when your base doesn't make it. You can have 3 or 4 items, set up because you're just starting to make it, and a harasser squad might pull up. It happens all the time. Take this as a learning opportunity. Next time, try to find a harder place for them to get to, and like I said, use that destruction as a learning opportunity. Tip number 9 is restricting access to some of your buildings. Now you can't restrict access to everything, but some things you can. As it stands, you cannot change the access of your silo, but you can change the access to turrets, flails, and orbitals. While facing the terminal, press and hold Q to change the access of the object. It bothers me when a new person refuses to get out of the anti-air turret and they are trying to shoot at infantry coming down the hill instead of the Liberator above with a Dalton. So after you build your turrets, make sure to change the access if you don't want people using them. And finally, you don't have to run the base to be a huge help in its success. If you come across someone else's base, try supporting it. See the base builder as the main guy, the foreman, right? At the job site, they are going to need help running and maintaining operations. As he is building his base, placing walls and such, you could grab cordium for the silo, set up Spitfire turret. Being on the supportive end of a base is just as important as the one who is building it. The big issue is when you get these apprentices on the job placing walls in front of the vehicle pad. I hope that these 10 tips have helped you guys, and we're going to keep this series going. If anyone else has some other tips for new players, of course there are a bunch of them, and there's going to be a lot of new ones as well, I'm sure, with the new construction update that's coming. But that is it for this episode of Construction Guides and Tutorials. We hope to see you in the next one.